Welcome to the Bayou Progressive. I'm Quentin Anthony Anderson, and today I'm joined by Lindsay Rubia Garcia, a Democratic candidate for Congress in Louisiana's 5th District. With this seat open as Representative Julia Letlow runs for the U.S. Senate, the race has become one of the more closely watched congressional contests in the state, especially on the Democratic side. Garcia has built a public profile through political commentary and advocacy, and now she's making the case that her background in law, education, and public engagement has prepared her to represent one of Louisiana's largest and most politically complex districts. Today, we're talking with her about why she's running, what kind of campaign she wants to build, and how she believes Democrats can compete in the fifth. Rubia Garcia, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about having this conversation and sitting down with you. As I said, I've kind of watched the work that you've done, and I admire the work that you're putting in here on this platform. It's necessary work.
Well, I appreciate it, and I want to make sure that these races are treated with the seriousness that they should be treated with because these are important seats, and particularly in your district, this is not a given that a Republican wins. It's an open seat, and and we'll talk about it a little bit later. If the Republicans decide to advance their front runner to the general election, all bets are off. So I do hope that people pay more attention. I hope Democrats pay attention to the primary, and I hope that in general people are tuned in for the general election because I think this will be an interesting race. But for people who are just now hearing your name in a congressional context, because you were certainly internet famous, you have quite the following. But for folks who are just now getting to meet you in a electoral context, who is Lindsay Rubia Garcia, and what in your life prepared you to run for Congress? What possessed you to run for Congress?
Oh, I think anyone at this juncture who wants to participate in the political party system has to be a little bit crazy, but hopefully not insane in order to get the policy objectives there because it is like a circus. You're not supposed to get mad at the clowns. You're getting get mad at yourself for bringing yourself to the circus. So here I am. Um, Myself, I am the daughter of a Marine, the baby of 10. I have 8 older brothers. I
Okay.
graduated from Carr in 2004. I went to LSU for a year till Katrina, came back, did disaster recovery, but all throughout that time in high school, I learned how to swim on the base, and then I became the manager of the base, and then I became the manager of the single sailor, single Marine program on base until I got married and graduated from school, and had 2 children. And then I got into the classroom. My goal in my mind was my father was an attorney. I was going to be like my dad and go to law school and do all these great and wonderful things. And then got married, had kids, and I got into the classroom. Thinking back on my childhood and the tough time that I had, and more importantly, that's even where the nickname Rubia came from. Because during that rough spot, I got into Latin dancing. So eventually teaching, traveling, performing, going across the country, started up the New Orleans Salsa Bachata Festival eventually recently. But during that time, I was in the dancing community, and my name, Rubia, means the blonde in Spanish. So it just kind of
Nice.
stuck throughout the entire thing. Like the progressing, it was like instead of Lindsay or whatever, they would be like, "Yo, Rubia, the Rubia with the tattoos," you know what I mean, or think something like that. So that kind of gave me a family. It gave me a culture. It opened me to the music and the traditions and all of that, and I always really deeply embraced that. And as I said, I got into the classroom. I still continued on with the dancing. Then I got my bachelor's from University of Holy Cross in history before I went into school, into the classroom, and but I continued on with my teaching education, getting certified. I did not intend to go viral, is an important contention. Back when I did that, and that happened for me, content creation wasn't a thing. People weren't online doing that kind of thing. And after the years that I had been working in education, my background being history, so I
Mhm.
taught historical thinking skills, primary, secondary sources, reading timelines, geography, human geography, civics and government, basic economic skills, and things like that. I taught those things in the classroom. And I started to see the disconnect from the emphasis being placed on historical thinking skills and social studies. And I really spoke out on education, but my main videos were speaking out on things that my students were experiencing in the classroom of a world that they were looking at that I wasn't seeing, whether that be for a privilege of some kind. It was different. The world that you could be anything you want to be wasn't the world that they were living in on the outside of our community. So I spoke out and then it happened. I went viral and then there was a voice that was missing. I realized as a teacher that you could teach on the internet, so I stayed.
Hmm.
That's where teacher life came from. Part of it was teaching the internet that you could teach and advocate on the internet. Fast forward 2019, the Hard Rock collapse in New Orleans. I had the platform, but even in that span of time, raising money for my classroom, putting laundry machines and washers and dryers in the school, or supplies for the classroom, or even this area that I'm running to represent right now I remember when the 2016 floods happened, and I remember sitting outside the skate country right there on Terry Parkway and doing literally like U-Haul truckloads of supplies and coming out, and I'm actually living ironically in the same neighborhood that I came out right around the corner from the church that I dropped the supplies at. And that takes me to the Hard Rock. So I've been able to utilize my platform in order to leverage it, in order to organize, in order to either raise awareness to issues or to be able to um, help in certain instances or get legislation, which brings back to the Hard Rock when the building had collapsed. And it killed three of the workers, and then two of the workers were left inside of the building. So one of them being publicly on display, being Quinyon Wimberly, covered up by a tarp. And my students were the ones I was teaching at New Orleans Military and Maritime Academy at the time, and our cadets were in full regs. They're attached to the Marine Force Reserve Unit, Marfa Res, right there, and that's when I saw the disconnect because we're trying to teach our kids to create a community of respect inside the four walls while ignoring a community of disrespect outside of them because our kids were walking past his body hanging from a downtown building in downtown New Orleans for 302 days. They watched him fall to pieces. They watched it. And in the community where it's like if we're not having the education and we don't have the vocational schools and training and we do not have the mentorship programs and we're not putting proper funding and resources and recreational facilities for our kids in these areas, then what are we doing? That eventually got me into some good trouble. That
Hmm.
eventually took me into George Floyd and the BLM protests and me stepping outside of the classroom during COVID. And I drove 30,000 miles around the country to attend protests from sea to shining sea, from Niagara to Tijuana, um, to see it for myself firsthand. And then got to a point I got injured on the front line and I had a lawyer's number written on my arm. And I said to myself at 35 years old, maybe the battlefields need to start changing and start
Hmm.
getting into education, educating myself because just because you're a teacher, the best teachers never stop being students. They are
Hmm.
always learning, they are always engaging. And even at 35 years old, I literally sold everything for to get on the road and to get into law school. And I just got into law school at this point in time. And while I have said I've started from scratch, the reality is I started from experience. I had tried to go to law school previously before and then failed in front of my entire platform. So failure doesn't necessarily scare me like it maybe once have before, at least on the public side. It encourages me because I'm only going to fail if I do not try. And that's one of the reasons why I'm going into this race is that people have been telling me for a decade to run that I am the type of voice that they are looking for, a fighter, an advocate, unapologetic, authentic, just from the grassroots, really built up from a teacher with just a smartphone to amassing a platform of million. I get that. Like it's a power and it's a responsibility, and I don't take it lightly. So I'm here to see whether or not they're right. If we are in this time, and I genuinely feel we are in this time, that we need fighters, that we need advocates, we need people to speak truth to power unapologetically and to speak for our children and for the future of our children and of this country within that. So that's a long story, but to bring it all the way full circle, I just graduated from law school, and I believe that I was given certain privileges up to and including this platform, and I take it very seriously. And the way I was raised and the experiences that I had, there's no point of privilege if you're not flexing it for progress. And that's what I think that I'm doing.
You went to Southern Law, right?
Yes, sir, I did the Southern University Law Center. Absolutely.
Why'd you choose Southern?
I chose Southern, the history, the different types of classes that I'd be able to attend and things like that. That I, for instance, maybe not the get particularly even professors like Professor Bell and working with certain
Hmm.
professors who I know who are entrenched in the type of work like I want to be Professor Bell. Like I look up to her, you know what I mean?
She's very awesome.
Yes, she absolutely is. Like that's a genuine inspiration for restorative justice components and deconstructing, especially with my history background and things like that, and restorative justice and reconstructing our narratives to reflect the true incidences of what happens and reckoning, because I genuinely believe that we are in a position we can heal from where we are, but we're not going to get anywhere without having open and honest conversations about it. And I feel like I could have those conversations at Southern University, especially given their history in civil rights and that social justice component and movement. My advocacy is all based on social justice. Everything is it's for us. The power of the people is more powerful than these people in power. And I wanted to go to a place that would educate me and arm me with the tools that I needed in order to flex that privilege, whatever privileges I have for power. And I believe I got that at Southern University Law Center. Definitely.
And the reason I asked was because a lot of people don't know this outside of the legal field, but uh, a lot of lawyers in this state, black, white, and everything in between, graduated from Southern Law School.
Mm-hmm.
But one of their issues is that once they graduate, a lot of alumni that aren't people of color forget that they graduated from Southern Law Center, and it becomes a convenient. It was a convenience when they were because Southern is one of the few schools that caters to non-traditional students, people that
Mm-hmm.
have to work as a 4-year program, and
That's me.
so
I'm a
yeah.
non-traditional student.
In fact, for most people who don't just go straight out of undergrad, it is the program that most kind of accommodates their lifestyle. But I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the issues has been that uh, some of their alumni they will get the education, they'll take advantage of the convenience, but then don't want to sort of carry the label of being a Southern University alumni and some of the things that come along with that, like raising money for your school and trying to create opportunities for your school. All of a sudden, I know of a couple prominent lawyers who say that they graduated with me at LSU Law School, and I'm like, I don't remember you. I don't remember you.
Interesting. I can't speak for anybody else, but I'm very proud it because I'm a daughter of Louisiana through and
Mm-hmm.
through. I know that I would not be the person that I am today had it not been for the upbringing that I had coming from New Orleans. I graduated from Carr in 2004. I
Mm-hmm.
was not only raised, but I also taught within the same 4 mile radius of rate that raised me all the way from Alice M. Hart to Edna Carr, all the way. I went away for LSU for the year, came back to do disaster. I did leave and go train in the Dominican Republic in Latin dance, but then I came home and did my degree at the University of Holy Cross, also within the same 4 mile radius
Yeah.
of that community that raised me. But I own where it is that I go outside of Southern. I went out to Southern and I moved out here for that. And I am the non-traditional student. So I am the one who was in the evening part-time program, raising
Mm-hmm.
two small children at the same time, going through it. But I am proud of Southern. I'm proud. I'm very proud. I had the opportunity to see the jukebox in person from the
Mm-hmm.
field. It was and in my I'm happy to be here in type energy, especially coming from somebody who, like I said, publicly failed, right? So I
Yeah.
tried to
Yeah.
take the LSAT the first time and I had to own up to the fact that it wasn't there. But in hindsight, you look at the way the powers that be and you look at
Mm-hmm.
you want to tell you have all these visions, tell God your plans type thing, because I wanted to go in 2018, but I did not make it. And then in 2019 is when the Hard Rock happened. So if the Hard Rock
Mm-hmm.
had not happened, I wouldn't have been there for those families. I would not have been able to travel around the country and see who it is and what it is that I'm fighting for now more than ever, on top of my childhood and my upbringing and things. But as far as Southern goes, Southern afforded me the ability to invest into the things that I was really interested, like public interest work, workers' rights, uh, literally education or legislation and policy, or more importantly, how certain aspects of things like race play a part in legislation. right? So this is for me, I wanted to get a diversity. I wanted because that's the way I was raised. I'm from Louisiana. We are the gumbo pot. We are the mix of everything here. It's what makes Louisiana. We've been French, we've been Spanish, we went back to France,
Hmm.
then we became American. That doesn't even count the native and indigenous, let alone the African influence, right? So we have here, I know where I am and I know where I'm from, and I will never forget nor be unappreciative of the space that I held at that university. I
Hmm.
looked at my space as me, I'm happy to be here. You know what I mean? I'm happy to have these different types of perspectives. Um, but diverse, meaning like
Yeah.
just across the span and spectrum. And it felt like the smaller class sizes afforded more intimate opportunities and things like that. And I am never the type to forget where it is that I come from
Hmm.
because I know that you wouldn't know who I was. I wouldn't be sitting here. The platform that I have would not exist had it not been for all of those experiences and all of those places that had poured into me and made me the woman, the candidate that I am today. So I don't think that that's for me, that's part of the issue is making sure that we are funding our education and our higher education and post education. But this is post secondary. This is where we're at, even in the funding it and making sure that we're providing the opportunities for people with financial disparities or across racial or income brackets and things to be able to access higher schools of higher education. And Southern, I know um, is a wonderful school for the experience that I was looking for, and it fit me, and I loved it. And I don't think when it comes to fundraising, we need definitely, obviously, more federal funding, but as far as that, we also need those who come from there, like you said, to come back and use it as a collective, the alumni to come together as a collective for fundraising because we could be doing a lot more over there at Southern. They've made a lot of improvements, I'll say that. I love the
Hmm.
Leon Tarver Center. I love the new buildings that are going up. They're making a lot more improvements, but I would love to see Southern University, and you can hold me on that of pushing for more funding for Southern.
Well, I think you're already a notable alumni, so I think that counts. Last thing on law school, and then I do want to transition to the Hard Rock because you've mentioned it a couple times, but um, because you so recently went to law school after you had already become sort of a public advocate and you'd gotten more involved in activism, did your did your law school education change the way that you view change and how change is possible?
I will say that law school helped me to refine the tools. Like for right now, like I mentioned, when I was starting content creation wasn't a thing. There
Hmm.
weren't people sitting here doing that. Matter of fact, I was very heavily criticized by family and friends and otherwise. Why are you sitting in your car? Why are you doing this? Why are you saying this? You're embarrassing yourself. To fast forward 10 years later, everyone is out here a content creator and putting out content and putting out podcasts and doing all of those things.
Yeah.
So in my mind, it just refined the tools. And I actually feel, ironically, I said this to a friend this morning, I feel like I am in 2010, I mean 2016 all over again, and there are issues that I want to address and I want to be effectual, but I cannot do it with the platform that I have. So I went and screamed at my phone on a live. I'm at that very same point, except now the entire mark social media is saturated. You have so many people putting out content that I'm actually at a point where I'm tired of talking. Like I'm tired of talking online, and that's
Hmm.
where Southern helped me to become more effective and to really understand that this is a game of chess and not checkers, and you will not win this policy game if you do not know the names of the pieces, the manners, how they move, how to achieve checkmate. And it also doesn't mean that you won't be sacrificed as a pawn if you continue to believe that these
Hmm.
policies have no effect on you because they do. So it's refined me to really get to the point of unless you're in the room where the decisions are being made, you can scream, hoop, and holler. But if you want clout, cool, that's for you. If you want likes, cool, that's for you. Now they've monetized it, which it wasn't in my day. Now they've monetized it to such a point that it's going so far extreme on either side just to
Hmm.
get the reaction, and the actual work is getting lost in the meantime. That's a part of actually what's frustrating me about the social media plan is that everybody's talking and everybody has people that they're listening to, and it's not all opinions are weighted the same.
No, no. But some opinions get great weight if you have a good podcast mic and a good camera. All of a
This is
sudden,
true.
right? All of a sudden you're viewed as and a good podcast voice. And all of a
Yes.
sudden what you say
Mhm.
is given more weight than maybe somebody who doesn't have the same platform. But might be arguing better substance.
I totally I do agree with that. I think that there are, but for instance, let's say this. Let's say you're sick. I'm a very educated, I'm a smart woman, but it's between me and a doctor, and we both give an opinion, which are the same. So just
Hmm.
because the loudest voice doesn't necessarily mean the most accurate, doesn't necessarily mean the most trained,
No.
doesn't necessarily mean the person that's been on the boots on the ground. It's just gotten to a point that I feel that a lot of people are talking, and we need more boots on the ground, and we need more people to lock in and start walking. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
talking going on, but we need more boots on the ground and locking in and walking because these algorithms are not safe.
Oh no. No. No, not
We're
at all.
already seeing that. I saw that this morning. These algorithms are not safe, and you can ask all your TikTok folks who are moving their way over ever since the United States and the
Hmm.
acquiring because they are losing out on money, they are losing out on viewership, they're being censored and things like that. So they're moving over to these other platforms as if Mark Zuckerberg wasn't sitting behind the administration during the inauguration.
Hmm.
So I'm saying that to say we are in a position where this also considers the legacy media, who has also been under
Hmm.
attack. And they have also been in a position where they're either facing lawsuits or censorship and having their
Hmm.
licenses revoked as a result of all
Yeah.
of this. So I do believe there's got to be a connection, and not all opinions are weighted the same, and it's just because you are popular doesn't mean it equates to accuracy or dependability. And as we are
Hmm.
even seeing with some of the podcast folks that are coming back, it's even on the right, the ones that are coming back and like, hold up a second, like this isn't what we voted for, this isn't
Hmm.
what we said. But it wasn't like that leading up to the election. You know what I mean? And that's where the power of the platform comes into it's a very serious responsibility, I believe, because you're leveraging that and people equate that. We have Donald Trump as president of the United States with no policy background, no government background, but he was a reality star. I remember him from The Apprentice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I was telling somebody earlier that Donald Trump certainly he is certainly proof that it was you I think I was
Yes,
telling yeah that
we were talking.
yeah that Donald Trump is proof that anything is possible
Hmm.
unfortunately because he's most certainly not qualified for the job he got but he is occupying it as if it was made for him. um
Well, yeah, like I said, the power of the people is more powerful than these people in power. The problem is the American people have been suffering from electoral insanity, in my opinion,
hmm
for a little bit too long. We can't continue to elect the same people over and over and over again and expect a different result. It doesn't track. So on people on the biggest issues, and even that's bipartisan issues where we think across the board, healthcare, bipartisan issue because we're all going to see a doctor,
hmm
education because we have children, you know what I mean? The affordability. I, like everybody else, I don't even need to be rich, and I'm actually okay with some people making more money than other people, but I'm not okay with people starving in that same system. Like I
yeah.
feel like it's a very common sense approach to all this. I try to be fair, firm, and consistent. I will listen to anybody, I will hear anybody out, and more importantly, I'm genuinely curious. I know that sometimes I can be a very forthcoming and almost very assertive, right? But that doesn't mean that I don't listen. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been overshadowed by eight brothers and a sister, and just trying to find my way and navigating even in that dynamic, or in the classroom with thousands, or in these spaces. Like I want to learn more than anything, and I want you to make it make sense to me, because then if you did, then I feel like I could, even if we don't necessarily align, I can still keep your interest in my mind to make a better,
hmm
well-rounded decision. I want to talk to these farmers out here and see how these policies are affecting them and get into that. I want to get into and talk about how the healthcare and the closures of these rural hospitals are affecting them. I can look at it on paper and I can have a few conversations, but even though the district is very large, I drove 30,000 miles with a German Shepherd in my front seat, like around this country. 14,000 square miles in the grander scheme of things doesn't necessarily scare me. But what
Yeah.
scares me is sitting back and doing nothing and feeling like the people of District 5 want a fighter, regardless of where we sit, because you don't have to like me, but it's a matter of, do you believe me or do you believe your pocketbooks? Because life is supposed to get easier with the policies that you're voting for. And if the policies aren't making your life easier, then maybe you should be asking who it is you're voting for. Because if it's
Yeah.
not for you, their vote is going to somebody else. So it's an
No, I, I,
entire.
I I think you make a good point because I think one of the criticisms that a lot of Democratic voters have with Democratic politicians is that Democrats will, when Republicans get elected, and it doesn't matter what the margin is, Republicans can win by one vote and then they'll govern as if they had just won by 40, right?
Mhm.
And they will do all of the stuff that is a top priority that all of their thought leaders have said this has to be done. They'll do it in the first like 60 days. They'll just get it done and they'll live with whatever the political consequences are therein. When Democrats get elected, we get in and we almost feel like we have to apologize for having power. We're very, very timid when it comes to the reforms that we implement because we're worried. Well, we don't want to piss off the Republican voters because, like, we're a little bit worried about that. And then we get surprised come the next election cycle when Democratic turnout is depressed. But what Democratic voters had voted for, which were all these policy things that you said you were good on, that you said were absolutely crucial. You said healthcare was a right, but then you get there and you end up placating the Republicans because you're worried about electability. You're worried about coming across as too liberal or not moderate enough. And Republicans don't have this concern. Republicans don't have this concern. Republican voters expect that when they vote for somebody, they're voting for the policies that they advocated for. But for whatever reason, Democratic politicians think that we only got elected because Republicans screwed up, so we just need to not like rock the boat too much and we can stick around. What is your take on balancing being an audacious elected official with you know uh trying to maintain some credibility with the you know broadest
The broader
possible
base.
with a broader base of your constituency.
Honestly, I look at it on a very humanistic level. And just like I said, the fact that you can not necessarily like me personally or like all of the issues, but even going, since we're segueing into the Hard Rock anyways, the Hard Rock was a segue issue because
Mm-hmm.
that's a union job. Is These are workers, these are everyday average Americans that are literally just going to work, living paycheck to paycheck. And if we can find our way and come to a human level and say, I want you to be able to take care of yourself and your family and to be able to live a comfortable life. And I want you to be able to go to work and not have to worry about people in power not doing their job or not doing inspections and then it costing you your life and your family having
Mm-hmm.
to deal without it. If we're talking about you not being one health crisis away from bankruptcy and literally going under and losing everything, I actually believe that there is far more that unites us as Americans. I still believe it to this day, and I have to. Even though we are divided as ever, as a historian, I know we faced moments like this before.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels so distant before, but I am American through and through. I like to the core. We're not just talking about Declaration and Constitution. We're talking about reading the Federalist Papers. We're talking about reading
Mm-hmm.
their diaries and journals just for fun because I want to understand where their mind was when we're drafting our founding documents. And if we're going to say that out loud and you're going to say like liberty and justice for all, for instance, as a campaign slogan, then we all need to mean it and have a very clear understanding as to what that meant into how that liberty and justice for all has changed and will change in the
Mm-hmm.
future. And I don't think that the whole goal of MAGA, I would disagree. It's not making America great again because in the history of the 250 years, it has never been great for the vast majority of us without being for a
Mm-hmm.
select few. I think the goal is to actually push the message to make it great for the vast majority of us for the very first time ever. And then once achieving greatness, what's the next step? But you can't call yourself the greatest country in the world. And yet, out of 30 plus developed and high income nations, we're the only one that only treats us as a privilege for those who can afford healthcare
Mhm.
versus those who cannot. That's unsustainable in an economic system. It is, I believe those issues between the true patriotic sense, right? The true what it means to be an American sense. I
Mhm.
believe in the healthcare we relate on. I believe education, you want to be able to educate your kids. And I do believe that people in this district in particularly don't want to get cancer. They don't want
Yeah.
to pass out from carbon from CO2 leaks from the carbon capture projects that they're trying to run through all throughout Louisiana. I think that they don't want to they want to be able to provide for themselves and their families and to be able maybe take a vacation once a year because you've been able to save enough money outside of not just living paycheck to paycheck. I think that those issues, even though I think they want fighters. I think that the Republican Party, the reason why they've gone, those who have voted Republican have voted for the Republicans because they are unapologetically fight, like saying it. They are saying the
Mhm.
thing that they are willing to fight, despite whether or not the record actually reflects it. We in America, Democrats and Republicans, because let me say this, up until this point, within the last couple of months, I was no party this entire time. I
Mhm.
just became a Democrat for the fact that we are, even though I do not agree with the two-party system fundamentally, and I am with the only president in United States history that didn't belong to one and warned about it in a
Yeah.
32-page farewell address, that creating political factions would make this country so dysfunctional and so
Oh.
corrupt that it would open the door for a demagogue to rise to power and for foreign governments to influence our democracy. That doesn't mean that I don't understand where we are and
Yeah.
that I feel like these policies and this platform more aligns with where we are.
Mhm.
And I want to reach, I am reaching across the aisle because I know that these things right here are important to their voters. And I think what they want more than anything is somebody to fight for them. For instance, like I fought for those men at the Hard Rock. And that means
Mhm.
even if it's 10 toes down and I'm sitting there by myself, they want somebody, and that's what I believe that the Republican messaging is really good at putting it out there is that the we're going to fight for you energy.
Okay, so let's talk about the Hard Rock. The 2019 collapse of the Hard Rock Hotel. There were three men that were killed, and as you mentioned a little bit, their bodies were left in the wreckage for an extended amount of time. There were dozens of people who were injured. What about that incident sort of activated you in terms of your public advocacy and activism?
It was about 3 months after the collapse. It was January actually of 2020 because crazy me, I just assumed that when an accident like that happened, that the first thing would be go in, recover the bodies, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
Kind of like how we saw at Surfside in Florida.
Hmm.
Um, what happened in January, my students came to my classroom and they kept telling me about a tarp that had blown off of the Hard Rock. And I was like, who cares? That building went down like 3 months ago. It's just like a tarp. And they had been telling me throughout the daytime. Now, my students knew about my social media platform. It did take them like 6 months to find it. But when they found it, I don't care. My projects are still due on Friday. Did you do my flashcards? Is my question. Like what we're doing here and what I don't encourage my students because I don't want that influence, but they knew that I had a platform, or they knew at least that I fought for them or that I cared about them. What had been transpiring in the months prior to that was my cadets were arriving to school late. They were missing the
Hmm.
buses, they were missing breakfast, sometimes missing formation in the morning. That's either the first meals that they get in the day, which is going to make my life harder when they come to my class with their stomachs growling later, and then they're missing formation to make sure they're not squared away before they're going into class. So it just compounded problems. And then by the time January came and they were telling me about this tarp, the picture, the tarp, Quinyon was killed in the building, and the
Hmm.
city had elected to let the builders and the developers remain in control of the demolition of the project. What they decided to do was to leave Quinyon, who was publicly exposed, and they decided to cover his legs with a plastic tarp. What my students were telling me was that tarp had blown off. I did not understand the relevance until finally, like the third kid told me, and I was like, okay, what's the obsession with the tarp? And they're like, no, it's got that, their exact words, it's got that black man behind it, Miss G. Timeout. Source three
Mm,
before me. Find three credible, verifiable resources, check it with three of your friends, and then come back to me.
yeah.
And then once they do that, you could see the video. Somebody had taken a picture, it went viral. And that's what brought it to them. And then they brought it to me. And then I drove down there that day because I still didn't believe that the city of New Orleans in downtown French Quarter, New Orleans, not
Hmm.
only the collapse, but you left human beings, workers, to decay on side of a building for our children to see, which means in their mind, coming from their mouths to your ears right now, and to whoever reads this, why should we worry about pulling on? You're asking us why we're pulling on car doors or why we're doing this or what can you
Hmm.
do? What do you do when the system that, and you're growing up in the state of Louisiana where they don't fund education, where they don't fund vocational schools, where they don't fund recreational parks? What are we supposed to do? It's like, even when we do right and we are like Quignon, who was a supervisor, went to work on his day off, engaged to a New Orleans police detective, was on the phone planning his father's thing as he's preparing for an upcoming inspection, covering for somebody else, gets killed on the job, and then they leave him on the side of the building on public display through Mardi Gras of 2020, mind you,
Hmm.
and they left him there for 300 days as his body parts decayed and they fell off, and they're delivering it to his mother who can see her son's body from the highway,
Hmm.
right? So what message is that sending to our kids? There's no hope out here for us. There's no reason for me to invest and to do all these things, because even when I do right, in the words of Miss Irene Wimberly, his mother, they're still going to do my baby down bad like that. And I cared. That's what activated me, because at the very least, my students were going to see that
Yeah.
somebody was willing to stand 10 toes down. And that was whether I was by myself or not, but I wasn't. I was with millions around the country, millions around the world, black, white, Latino, Asian, across the board, political spectrum. It didn't matter. What
Hmm.
mattered was that was wrong. Hard
Hmm.
Rock didn't get nearly the amount of coverage that
Right.
Surfside did. But
Hmm.
Surf, I want you to imagine that we're looking on the TV in Surfside and you could see somebody's remains. Like, it
Yeah.
is, we don't do that in Louisiana, where we don't bury our dead below ground as it is. They turned 1031 French Quarter, downtown New Orleans, into an abnormally large, even for New Orleans, even for Louisiana. They turned that into a tomb for our kids
Yeah.
to sit there and witness every single day and to celebrate next to during Mardi Gras. And that right there, there was a distinct shift inside of me. I could not. I knew it was probably going to cost me my teaching career, but like I told my commandant, I'm not going to. I'm not going to stand in front of these kids when my kids ask what happened to Miss G. I'm not going to ask you to again create a community of respect inside my four walls, but to tolerate a community of that kind of disrespect on the outside of it. And these kids more than anything need to know that people are invested and people will fight for them. And the families and the community around here need to know that too, that there are people that are willing to put it up there. And that's, honest to God, I think I've hit the full gone track to get to this point.
No, and we've had similar, because it does say something about the community at large and how government and law enforcement views that community. We've had instances where there have been homicides in the north part of Baton Rouge, which is the blackest part of Baton Rouge, uh, and the bodies of the deceased will sit there in the street for hours, and the presumption is that, well, these kids live in the hood, so it's not that surprise, like we'll get to it, but there's no concern for the mental health of the community. There's a very clear disregard, and a devaluation, I think, sometimes when, and not to take us down too much of a rabbit hole, but I think sometimes the intellectual dishonesty of the right when they um, demonize things like the phrase Black Lives Matter. And they try to make it seem like Black Lives Matter is some sort of statement of superiority. And really, it's just an acknowledgement of the reality of the situation, which is that right now, lives like Black lives, like immigrant lives, are treated as if they don't matter in instances like that, right? Where, well, if there's a dead body in a black neighborhood, those kids aren't going to care as much as they would care in a white neighborhood. That would traumatize those white kids. But for those black kids, they're probably used to it. And it's those small, not even small. It's those really, it's these thoughts that people have in the back of their mind that start to add up and end up resulting in the disproportionate mistreatment of people that come from these marginalized communities, because it's those small things. It's, well, they probably come from the hood, so they don't care. They probably can't read, so they're not gonna, like, it's all of that, and it adds up, and they don't think about it in the micro sense, but over time, yeah, it does add up to society saying that these lives don't matter.
My earlier videos was me coming to terms with, not coming to terms, but starting to understand after listening to what my students were trying to say and then reconciling that with my past experience and my father in the criminal justice system and my family being in the types of cases and things like that. I understood what I was processing and really just talking out loud when I went viral about this issue,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously I am white. My marriage, Latino children, etc. When I spoke out on Black Lives Matter, I never interpreted it for myself, but I did see the disconnect. I did see people who looked like me who were taking it as Black Lives Matter and they're the only lives that matter. So it's kind of like, and that's when you had the response. And why I finally, because the response was all lives matter. You would say
Mm-hmm.
Black Lives Matter, and somebody would say all lives. Well, guess what? I related it like this is actually one of my earlier videos, I think, where I was like, just common sense. I want a cure to all diseases. I want a cure to Alzheimer's,
Mm-hmm.
ALS. I want a cure to all these different diseases. But we're not talking about, it's like showing up to a breast cancer 5K run, holding up a sign that says cure all diseases. Yeah, I want to cure all diseases, but we're talking
Yeah,
about breast
yeah.
cancer right now. We're talking about this right now. Let's address these issues because then maybe we can heal and actually move forward and actually get to to the places, not just by electing people, but by unpacking and dealing with all of those underlying issues and bringing that up to the surface. And I think that, and I myself have done it too. I've responded from fragility because I have these experiences. So I think I know more and I have had microaggressions. And I think that when it comes down to folks, it's uncomfortable to talk about for folks that look like me because they either don't know or they don't really understand or the education system has failed them so that we don't unpack and have these conversations and really navigate these situations in a way that is fair, firm, and consistent across the board and looking at it things from varying viewpoints. And I think a lot of that has to deal with our educational system and what is in the curriculum and the things that are being taught or the manners in which they are being taught. We are in the 21st century in the year of our Lord, 2026. Like we cannot be using the textbooks from the 1990s anymore. Like we have to update, and this is the big issue going across really just the country of the narrative and the historical narrative. And I do agree with you that the Democrats, in my opinion, is the reason why one of the main reasons I'm running is because I do feel like the Democrats dropped the ball. You mean to tell me that I drove 30,000 miles around the country to help push for, police reform, the George Floyd Police Reform Act or the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which would have prevented, for instance, certain things like this from going on. But then at the same point, now you get control and you get power. And it
Mm-hmm.
is, I think that personally, the Democrats, in my personal opinion, I believe that the Democrats are willing to sacrifice progress and justice on the altar of civility, despite the fact that we have a president that curses from behind the presidential seal, that says the
Mm-hmm.
things that he says, along with everybody in the party. You don't have to say the words F you to not be effing over somebody. Are you
Mm-hmm.
tracking? Like, and I think that's what I mean. You're willing to sacrifice justice. You have the truth, you have the facts, you have the data, you have history, you have the things on your side, but yet you're still struggling to get the message across and making it land because I think they're speaking over and not to. I think they're speaking at and not to, and making it in a way that is digestible. And I don't think that I want more candidates. I want more people in the Democratic Party that are going to be forceful, that are going to understand that this is serious business. We have Project 2025 that is more than half complete at this point in
Mm-hmm.
time for a party that said it's not going to be that. And for my Republican friends who said he said he doesn't know anything about it and all that, they're not going to do all of that. And yet
Hmm.
Here we are. So I don't I believe that I was, like I've said, I believe I was given certain privileges, which includes my upbringing and my the diversity of my passions, even which are broad and across the board. I care about everything, and that's the empathy in me. But we have to be able to be effective with the work that we're doing. But that passion is stemmed from wanting to see that change and wanting to see the people who are willing to fight for it as if it deserves to be fought for. And I think we need more of that. And I do agree with the Democrat. I think the Democratic Party, particularly after January 7th, um, should have leaned in a little bit harder in those 4 years. So we shouldn't be in Iran right now. We should have released the Epstein files then. Anything that could have, it should have gone all in
Hmm.
at the first chance, because otherwise, what was all of that for?
Yeah.
What did we do it for?
No, you're right. You're right. Why why are you running for office now? Like, what do you believe that you can do in Congress that you uh, either can't do or you can't do as effectively in your current position? You know, as a very prominent and vocal sort of outside advocate.
I think the most important thing is that we take away the illusion of running for office, like the
Hmm.
disillusionment from running, because I don't think that people understand that it was harder for me to register my daughter for high school than it was to actually qualify to run for office.
That's
Let's
true.
start there. Now, granted, everything that comes along is probably the most difficult thing that I've ever done. And now that I've started this process and now that I'm getting into it, I think it only gave me a more profound respect for people who actually throw their name in the hat and get into this, because it's
Hmm.
a circus at times. Like, it is absolutely crazy. But just like I've always done, I want to educate my platform. And that's everybody, because I don't think that we get anywhere without moving as a collective. I am fighting for District 5 because I believe that I represent and I will fight for unapologetically. When they send me to Congress in November, I know in my heart and in my gut, because I take this job so seriously, which is what affords me the opportunity to hold people to account the way that I do. I take it so seriously that I will exhaust myself to the point of not wanting to disappoint or not wanting to underserve the people who sent me there, because if they know everything about me and they send me anyways, you sent the teacher lawyer with an assignment, and I will understand that you want somebody, everything that comes along with me. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but my daddy says that love isn't finding perfect people, it's seeing imperfect people perfectly. And if I could get the people of District 5 to see me perfectly and to send me on the assignment, I feel nobody will be able to be as open and as honest and transparent, but more importantly, take them to through the process of how this whole thing works. I want to explain to them how to go in and qualify for office. I want to explain to them how to the laws that go into in the FEC and the reportings and the filings. I want to explain to them the different canvassing tools and the different voter file things. I want to explain to them the research. I want to take them through this process, because we are not going to get anywhere if we are not elevating people from our community who understand these issues, who feel these issues. Otherwise, we are going to continue to let people from far off places with a whole bunch of money and their own interests continue to lead, and we deal with the consequences. We are the ones that are bearing the brunt of everything that comes. I feel like one of the main things I want to change, regardless of the outcome, is number one, the hardest step is the first step. And that's just to take the step in order to do it. And then to bring down and break down the walls and not gatekeep this process, so that people, everyday, more average Americans, can get there, but speak to the people that they're representing more. Because I think that you're right. I think that Donald Trump in that race has shown that they don't want perfect people. They want people who are going to fight for them, make them believe in certain
Hmm.
instances that they are going to fight for them. But I think there needs to be a reconciliation between the electoral insanity. The moment that somebody shows you who they are, you believe them the first time and then you pivot, right?
Yeah.
That's the way the process is supposed to go. And I think that's part of the problem. And I want to continue on this process. And I want, as I'm learning and as I'm educating and spreading out and bringing it and making it more accessible, making the process more accessible and explaining we are in a position where a quarter of this country cannot name the first five freedoms of the First Amendment. They probably think that freedom of speech is just it, you know what I mean? Or freedom of religion and don't realize there's certain things. But when we're dealing with a country that's sadly half can't read above a sixth grade level at this point. Like we need the people who are in those positions to run for those positions and are educated enough and qualified enough to get into that spot to be able to uplift other people. And I think that that's what my job is and my role is. If I have the privilege to uplift other people or to educate other people, I will want to do that. So I will want to reach them. But what do I think that I could get done? I think that we need a coalition and it shouldn't just be me. I think that coming November, which explains the mid-districting redrawing that they've done and the other tactics that they've done as far as changing voter laws and things like that in the last couple of years. I believe that they know that these policies from Iran with the gas prices, from inflation to the tariffs to the certain aspects of the big beautiful bill, like cutting Medicaid and the ACSA subsidies expiring and things like that. I think they know that these policies are actually not popular. And that's where it comes down to doing these other things outside of the normal gambit of things. I think that being able to talk to people and not at them or above them is kind of what I intend to bring to this. But I definitely want to awaken a movement, not just District 5, but Louisiana, but an entire base. I just turned 40 yesterday, and the demographics of Louisiana have, as far as the political structure, it has changed so much just in my lifetime as far as going one way. I'd like to bring it back to a center point. I'd like to bring it back to a moderate point, and that includes reining myself in when necessary. I am not above reproach. That being said, it's a learning process, and I want to get more people involved in that process, is what I'm saying, in some capacity, whether that's running, jumping on a campaign, doing volunteer work, getting engaged, showing up at the state capitol, doing that, meeting with your representatives and things like that, holding us accountable, going down the line. There's a lot that I would like to get done, and I'm fortunate enough to have the platform to be able to do a lot of those things. But I think that my platform has kind of hit its plateau, and it's time to level up and not necessarily leaving the classroom necessarily, but the classroom's just getting bigger, I suppose, trying to reach more.
What is if you had to pick, if you could only sort of, if you were given your stump speech and you could only talk about three primary issues that you want people to focus on when it comes to your campaign, that you want people to walk away thinking, all right, she gets me on these issues, or this is what she wants to be defined by in this campaign, what would be the three issues?
For myself, I think that a common sense is, and I'm speaking for myself as one of these people. I don't want to be rich. I could probably make a lot of money on social media and doing the publishing and things like that, but I don't need to be rich. I just want to be comfortable. And I think that that's the vast majority of the people in this district. They want to be able to take care of themselves and keep food on the table. And if they're lucky, do something nice with their family a year, throughout the year. I think that the affordability issue that we have here and the narrative of that, I think that policies are really supposed to work for people. And but when your paycheck isn't stretching that far, and I I want them to take away that you don't not necessarily have to like me. You don't not have to necessarily agree with the things on everything that I say, but I do think that people have to live with their own lived reality. And you don't have to, in the economic sense, I am for social welfare programs. I am for the
Mm-hmm.
safety nets because we can't, for instance, offer places like Walmart the tax credits for hiring, folks who are impoverished, right? But then we're double dipping and paying twice. For instance, we'd be paying them for hiring those who don't make enough money and are on public assistance, while we are also paying for public assistance because they refuse to pay them a livable wage while working there for them. I believe in economic policies that are going to speak directly to the vast majority of Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. That's my biggest and my first thing. I believe that healthcare is a human right. I don't believe that we should be calling ourselves the greatest nation in the world and up there if we cannot provide and make sure that people aren't one healthcare disaster away from going
Yeah.
bankrupt and losing their homes or having to choose between whether or not I'm going to save my child or pay my house note and things like that. Um, in social justice, which runs the gambit in my mind from racial to economic to environmental, which is a big thing because want, I am for business. It's not that I am against business. It's not that I don't understand that oil is literally in everything. But at the end of the day, it's unsustainable. These are
Yeah.
non-renewable by common sense name. Like it just says it. Now, not to say it's going to go away in our lifetime, but at some point, you have to
Yeah.
understand that we need something and we can't be always at the beckon of that. And I believe that we should be able to create a medium where we don't have to sacrifice, we can find clean jobs that are affordable. So by getting the jobs out here that are both clean, and this goes from rural and broadband jobs. So bringing jobs out into this district that are supported by the infrastructure, and we can bring businesses and we can have the broadband there, and then we can create a remote work sector out here in District 5 where people can remote work and that benefits. It's good paying trained jobs while also providing them the ability to exist in that foreign, not in that rural structure. My main things are those components. Being able to the economics aspect of it, the healthcare aspect of it being a right and not a privilege that only some can afford. And
Hmm.
then also the social justice aspect, and also that includes education, which I failed to mention in that one. And I will throw it in there, equal opportunity to education, equal access, special education, funding, making the entire gambit. My passions are broad, and that's part of it, but we have so many issues, and none of that includes what I can have the best policy issue, Quentin. I can have the best agenda and all the things that I want to get done, but unless we get a rein on the executive, I'm failing to see beyond that because we are
Yeah.
at an inflection point where laws are not being listened to, i.e., the Epstein Transparency Act, right?
Yeah.
Laws are not being followed through, and there is a lack of accountability. We're not having as many hearings as we should. We are not drafting
Hmm.
legislation to address the issues that are going on. So I believe that there's a disconnect because our current Congress, as it is not being reflective of the people, and it's not reflecting the will of the people, not in healthcare, not in, for instance, Epstein or other issues, or even Iran, especially considering running on no new wars. But it's like we are doing the opposite of things that
Here we
people
are.
ran against.
No.
So those are my major issues.
Do you have in mind if you got elected tomorrow, what committees you'd want to sit on?
I would want to be on the judiciary,
Okay.
appropriations, probably those two, to be honest,
Okay.
to be starting with. I'd want to be able to bring in and have a conversation. I have questions for
Okay.
Attorney General Pam Bondi, for instance. I have a couple. I mean, I had a couple during before, but I mean, now I definitely have a couple more questions. And I think that that's what the people of District 5 want, is that they want somebody that more reflects Louisiana in the sense of the broad diversity that exists there, but also has the fire and the sauce. You know what I mean? That is reflective of the diversity that exists here. That you can have, for instance, like myself and the talk or the every man's a king type energy. Like we need somebody that
Mm.
has this populist type base and this root word being progressive, root word being progress. Can we own back what progressive is, for instance, and the root word being progress, the progressive era in American history, which
Hmm.
got us the ending of child labor and the 8-hour workday and fair wages and uh, uh, the NAACP or women's suffrage and these types of things that came, but that came from the power of the people being more
Yeah.
powerful than the people in power. I think that people want more candidates that are going to be reflective of that. And I feel like the Democrats are really we got to get on the ball as far as putting forth those types of candidates and then following through with that type of energy immediately. So, because we can't sit here and make the promises and not reflect on it. That was a bit of a disenchantment that have had with the Democratic Party, was that I want more candidates that look and sound like me. And this includes the Gen Xers, the millennials, and then these voters that are going all the way down into to colleges, 18 to 24 groups that are not engaging. They're separating themselves from it, yet they were going to be the ones that are going to deal the most, for instance, with the environmental factors
Hmm.
as a result of it. So I I definitely would want to be on those committees to be able to, for instance, rein in the DOJ and to get a hold on whether that be the Epstein Act or what happened to Alex Preddy and Renee Good, et cetera, and following in through what bringing in and finding the accountability, because we cannot, and even Republicans in Congress have said just this, whether that be to former DHS Christy Noman, what have you. We serve nobody, even if you are back in the blue. You don't back the blue by pretending that it's okay to kill Americans in broad daylight on American streets. That's not
Exactly.
the way it works. So I think that that's kind of where we're pushing for, and what folks in District 5, regardless of the political spectrum, Republican, Democrat, purple in between, I think that that's just a common sense approach to dealing with it. And I think that I could do that on the appropriations
So
or
I always
judiciary rather.
so I always ask people this. In 2026, what is the difference between a Democrat and a Republican in your opinion?
I'm not, that's a tough, there are many differences, but I think that what matters is the ways that we're actually together, that we actually have more things in common than we do different, but that there are political structures and um, social constructs put in place to divide us for a reason. Because if they ever got together and we are able to unite the working class white folks and the people of color and the disabled and the LGBTQ and all the women, and we all got on one front, which we all have, the vast majority, even on the economic top versus bottom. It really does feel like, in my opinion, that the Republican Party is all about the billionaires. It's all about the corporations. It's all about the special interest groups. And it's not to say the Democrats are not, because it's again my disgust with both parties. It is, I am for taking back Citizens United, removing money from politics, banning stock trading, the entire nine yards. I think that um, reaching them is the most important part, and getting those issues that are bringing us together, because I do believe on the things that actually matter in this country, like money, like being able to take care of our kids. We can see eye to eye on healthcare, and finding the places where we see eye to eye and not seeing ourselves in the differences. But there are, in the sense of, I think that the Republicans are, and I'm not going to say Republicans, and I don't like to blanket, and I think that's it
Hmm.
because I'm a Democrat, but I'm not your Orthodox Democrat, correct?
Yeah.
So I'm not the typical establishment Democrat in my particular mind. So it's difficult to paint in a broad brush, but I do feel that the Republicans and the MAGA Republicans that have gone to the furthest far right, there are distinct differences in the even the Republicans versus the MAGA Republicans, because there I remember fiscal conservatives. I remember
Hmm.
conservatives who used to care about a deficit and used to care about government spending, and I still think that they do. And in that sense, I think that there's still more than a minority of those who are on the far extreme that are like, let's go ahead and start a new war and kill more of our service members over there
Hmm.
and have trillions of dollars of our bases that we have and infrastructure we have built in the last 40, 50 years be destroyed in the, not to mention the supply chain interruption. They didn't want all of that. They wanted to be able to afford to take care of their families. And I think that that is the ultimate bottom line. If we could start to look at each other as human instead of the differences and the things that ultimately divide us, and I'm guilty of this myself, we need to start coming together, because I do feel it's an existential crisis for the people of District 5, Louisiana, and the United States as a whole, because we are getting to a point where surveillance is out of control. We are getting to a point where the prices and the grocery prices, the gas prices, not to mention our international and domestic security. Now that this conflict has erupted, I think that there are issues. There is far more that brings us together than the things that are intentionally meant to divide us. And that's all I'm going to say on that. I believe I can speak more on certain aspects of a MAGA base, differences and specifics in for instance, the outcome of the 2020 election and believing in the transition of power and what is the definition of a patriot, for example, because I am a patriot. I am not loyal to a person or to a party. I'm loyal to the people who put me in office. I'm loyal to the people first. And I believe that there's a percentage of the Republican base that has kind of lost sight or was unawares or is being having the Constitution and its principles being misrepresented to them directly.
Hmm.
Because that's not, you can't sit here and say that, just because you are president of the United States, you're not entitled to rights. That tells me you haven't read Amendment 14 or 5, right? Because you are entitled, this applies to persons.
That's
The
right.
framers knew the difference between person and citizen, which is why they didn't use them interchangeably. They were very specific about the language in which they use. So they are provided that. Yet, when we go online, we see Republicans, particularly MAGA, deep red Republicans, telling them that they are not entitled to due process. Yes, they are. How are you to determine whether or not they're a citizen without due process if you just throw them on a plane and ship them out to Sica and El Salvador? It doesn't work that way, but that's where I think that it is. Obviously there's a disconnect in the education and folks not having the information, and then certain people knowing that and then playing upon either the ignorance of folks on both sides of trying to make them feel like they don't have a power or they don't have the influence or the knowledge base to fix it. I think that we have a lot of work to do, both sides of the aisle, and I really wish more than anything. And I've questioned whether or not, honestly, have I played into that? Have I made it worse? Have I made it better? I'm
Mm.
always self-reflecting on my platform, and I know that I don't always express it the best. But I ask people to charge that to my head and not to my heart, because
Mm.
everything in me wants to fight, and I don't know what better ways to do it than to be authentically myself. It has gotten me to this point. It has gotten the achievements that I have been able to get done and the help that I've been able to afford to the communities, but also the pouring back into me as a person, as a woman,
Hmm.
as a human being, period. I want us to get back to we're all in this together. Like we're not making it out alive, any of us. We have to make this time here count and be effective, and more importantly, try to reach people that are realizing this. I'm under no misconception that certain people will never go for me.
That's life.
I would like to, but even, let's be honest, even Jesus was not liked by everybody, and I am a far cry. You know what I mean? So we have to accept those who want the change. And I want to find those who want the change, who want to fight for somebody, who want to fight for something for their children and to leave something and to leave a legacy behind and to be able to live a life that I want to be able to say that I'm proud to be an American, and there's certain aspects that are going on in this country, whether that be the immigration policies, the economic policies favoring oligarchs and billionaires over the average American, when this entire country is literally held up by the strength of our backs and off the sweat of our brows. And
Hmm.
I really think that regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, as a person who was no party, is a new Democrat at this point, I think that that's what the vast majority of us in the political spectrum in this country are independents. We really don't want to,
Hmm.
but they exist, and those
That's
power structures
yeah.
that are in place benefit from the controlled chaos of keeping us constantly at our heads. And again, I'm not above it. I'm not a person that hasn't been caught up in the mix of it. If I did it, I did it. But if I didn't, I didn't. And that's one thing that you'll know is that you don't question where you stand with me, fair, firm, and consistent. And that's just the way it is. And I think that they want people across the board, red, blue, purple. They want that. They want the
That's right.
consistent and fair, firm, honest.
Okay, so just a couple more questions. I don't want to
Mhm.
keep you terribly long, but w This is obviously all of the seats are gerrymandered to some degree.
Hmm.
And so outside of the second and the sixth, all of them are gerrymandered to keep Republicans in office, at least theoretically, based on how people have voted and things like that. What is, especially as a first time candidate, what is your realistic path both to the nomination and then also to, you know, stealing a seat, being able to take one of these Republican gerrymandered seats right from under their noses in what should be a wave election?
I think that when they redrew the district, because I was in voting rights litigation in law school as Robinson versus Ardorn was playing out,
Mm-hmm.
and then Calais versus Louisiana came in afterwards. I remember having conversations with Ernest Johnson and Judge Janice Clark,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember having these conversations about what this looks like. And while Julia Letlow won in 2024 with the district that she has, um, it's about the contenders that are up and the people who are challenging her. Number one, the amount of money and the base that they can raise.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, no matter what, it's the elections and money walks. And this is just where we are given the political arena. But those lines that they drew, yes, they include, excuse me, more red districts, deep red districts like my district in Louisiana. And it stretches all the way from North Louisiana, as you know, all the
Mm-hmm.
way that I call it the 9 degree of the boot, like
Yep,
everything, the
that's right.
whole span of the 9 degree of the boot. Um, but when they redrew those lines, it's very difficult because the district is so broad and the people of
Mm-hmm.
like Washington are not going to be the same as Tennessee or East or West Carroll, et cetera, let alone Monroe. And the issues are, they're not going to be the same. But I do feel that by expanding and doing that, they did include areas like LSU. They did include colleges and universities and things like that. And I believe that that is a funnel, a ground of individuals who want to get inspired. They want to get encouraged. They want to get engaged. They see what's going on around them. They see, like I did when I was just in college, that now we're capped on our student loans and now we're coming out and
Mm-hmm.
these student loans are coming back up. And I'm coming out of college. And if I'm coming out of undergrad and I can't afford to live in Louisiana, I'm leaving, which is a big issue in
Mm-hmm.
District 5. There aren't the jobs here. There isn't the infrastructure here in order to keep our young people inside of the district. As somebody who graduated from Carr and 20 years later, we're a lot of our folks have left, are going outside of Louisiana in general. My
Wow.
strategy is to meet people where they are. I feel like with the lines being drawn the way that they are, I feel like LSU, for example, the instances and the interactions with LSU between the state administration, between
Mm-hmm.
the overall administration plays a part. I believe that the trajectory of as a result of the policies,
Mm-hmm.
Julia Letlow won in 2024 pre Donald Trump the last 14 months.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
believe genuinely that the people of District 5, I'm reaching Democrats, I'm reaching the no party, which I was up until this point, and realizing that I'm aligned with the Democratic Party and I am willing to be one of the Democrats in this party that are willing to push that envelope and be the unorthodox one, or more importantly, say the thing. I will
Mm-hmm.
say the thing that other people are either afraid to say or are too timid to say or feel like they're pushing it a little bit too much, if only because my gut and my heart and my instinct says to say it because that's somebody in my constituency that's like, say that thing that needs to be said, even if it's a little bit too much. It needs to be said and put on the table for discussion. So my goal and my strategy is to get my primary and to get the primary election and to get that out there. And if I can get the once I get the primary election, my goal, because that's 2 months away. So it's
Mm-hmm.
aggressive given that we're looking at 14,000 square miles. But again, I drove 30,000 miles around the country in the span of a year with a German Shepherd in my front seat of my car. And as a history teacher, also teaching Louisiana history, there's a few
Mm-hmm.
places that I haven't been. So I'm actually rather excited
Yeah.
to get out there and kind of canvas in person all the way until November. I am actually kind of geeked out to have conversations with either other candidates or the farmers and meeting them and seeing and having them explain it to me. And we know that. I want you to make it, because if you can make it make sense to me, even if I don't agree,
Mm-hmm.
I know I'll be able to represent you. But I want the farmers, Republican, Democrat, everywhere in between don't, if you don't necessarily agree with me, that's fine, but maybe you can help me understand because maybe I have the misconception. But more importantly, you
Hmm.
believe what your bottom line in your pocketbooks. And if you can tell me that the Doge cuts helped you, and the USAID programs where we get our rice and our soybeans and all these products from that are usually shipped over into these nations
Hmm.
that are foreign nations and our foreign policy component. If you're telling me that that helped you, I am unaware of that because everybody that I've talked to has said that they are facing foreclosures and they are going into debt, which brings us to the response, which is to cut checks. Well, if I'm a farmer and I owe money and Donald Trump just gave me a refund check of some kind, that money's not coming to my pocketbook. If you could tell me that money went to your pocketbook, okay. But the vast majority that I have spoken to is I didn't see that money. That money went straight to the bank
Yeah.
and it's not going to them. So my strategy is outside of the typical campaign thing that you think about of text messaging and phone banking and reaching people, but given the district is so large, but my goal is from now until November, I'm going to meet people where they are because that's always what I've been. That's how I learn, it's how I engage. I tend to ramble, charge it to my head and not my heart, but I it's because I care and I want to understand and also be
Hmm.
understood. And I feel like that's a very human sentiment and emotion. And I
Yeah.
think we need more passionate human people in Congress that are representing people. And I think that the only way people will know that about me is if they see me, meet me. I'm a big person on energy and meeting in person and things like that. Um, but distance wise, I can understand. But as many town halls as I can, as many conferences as I can, as many
Mm.
interviews as I can, I will do anything because I am locked in. And that's my message to the people of District 5 and elsewhere around the country. This is not the time to sit back. It's the time to lock in and start pushing forward because literally everything is on the line and you have nothing to lose at this point. Like we have inflation out of control. We have wages down. Jobs are low. Housing is crazy. That doesn't count the international conflicts, let alone the domestic ones and all of our corruption just within what we're going on. We have serious problems and we need serious people that are going to fix them. And more importantly, people that are going to be responsive to their people and listen to
Yeah.
their people and then put in policies that are going to benefit their people. And I think that people need to hear that one on one. So aggressively meeting with folks and getting out there on the road. I'm actually looking forward to it, to be honest. Can't wait.
It's going to be a journey for sure.
Hmm.
And I traveled with my little beagle for a good chunk of it until the Airbnbs got to be a little too expensive bringing
Yeah.
the dog with you.
Hmm.
But my little guy, he adjusted his bladder to the campaign, so he can he can hold it for at least 12 hours because he's done it before.
Oh, goodness.
Uh, so in closing, what is one thing that voters in the fifth should know about you before they make up their minds?
I think
You want to give
that
me like a pageant answer and say I care too much?
that's probably what it is. That because like I said, my passions are so broad, but I believe empathy is free,
Hmm.
and I believe that you should be able to see party fine. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? And people who are saying people are like, oh, I'm colorblind or any of these things. Nobody's asking for you to be colorblind. More importantly, it's a lie because everybody sees it. We're not looking for I'm not looking for perfect people. I'm looking for people who are going to be authentic and trustworthy. I'm not looking for I'm not looking at party. I'm seeing past it. I'm not looking at color. I'm seeing past it. I'm looking at the bare bones of the things that are going to affect me, the things that are going to help me, and putting people in places that are willing to protect me, who I feel, even if I don't necessarily align with on everything, I believe that this person I can trust, that they have a track record of fighting for people because I am one of the people. I am a single mom. I am the former teacher. I am the person that has fought for workers and unions and things like that and trying to Hard Rock being a non-union job. I
Hmm.
am the person who has dedicated and more importantly risked my life, my life, my liberty and my livelihood for the things that I believe in, no matter the consequences, be damned. I'm willing to deal with the consequences of my actions because if I did it, I did it. And that's what self-purification in doing this type of work is all about. You can recognize a problem, you can try to negotiate, but you ultimately have to self-purify and to decide how far are you willing to take it. I myself, I've demonstrated repeatedly time and time again, I'm willing to take it wherever I need to go in order to get the job done or in order to be effective. And I think that more importantly, people want people that they can trust and that are responsive to their needs. And I feel like I want people to know that my passions are broad, that I care about so much, but in the things that are directing towards them in their district, I hope that they see that not just it's not a policy platform for me, that it's literally my life because I live it just like them. They people let and I joke about it, but being famous on social media is like being rich in Monopoly. It's not real, so I wish folks would calm down, except for the fact that you have the power to, reach people. But I'm just a
That's right.
person. I'm just a teacher with a smartphone. And if I can do it, you can do it. And that was my
Yeah.
whole teacher life message is that people are actually more powerful. I hope that they know how powerful they are in them and that I hope that they give me the power to go forward and to represent them. I want them to be empowered in their district and to feel like these systems can work. I don't want them to give up hope that we can come together, find common ground, and make progress here in District 5 and in Louisiana and in the United States.
Lindsay Rubia Garcia, Democratic candidate for Congress running in Louisiana's 5th congressional district. Thank you so much for making some time for us. Good luck
That's,
on your journey, and I am looking forward to chatting with you again soon.
I am really looking forward to it. Thank you.